Oh.
5 burning questions.
Yes.
The Tukes are back.
We're out in the wilderness.
Yes, I like being out in the wilderness. I'm an outdoorsy type.
I feel like I'm out in the wilderness a lot of these days.
Okay, well, listen, here's how it's going to work.
Right.
We got 5 questions pertaining to this division. We will start with the defending Stanley Cup champion Tampa Bay Lightning. Cooch out all year, Stamkos banged up, Hedman playing with some sort of injury, Barclay Goodrow out indefinitely, and a Florida Panthers team that seems very comfortable playing the Tampa Bay Lightning this year. They take 5 of 8 in the regular season series. So the question, the burning question, is what is your level of concern for Tampa heading into the postseason, if any?
Well, I have concern because of all those injuries that you mentioned. Now, it'd be easy to stand here and say, hey, they're defending Stanley Cup champions. They've got a great team. They'll figure it out. When the lights come on, the playoffs begin, they'll be ready to go. And they may well be. But let's face it, these games are hard. The Florida Panthers feeling confident and feeling like they have a really good chance. Stamkos and Kucherov, especially Kucherov, he's a great player, but he hasn't played. How long is it going to take him? Is it going to take him 1 shift? Is it going to take him 2 games to kind of find his way? And the biggest one for me, Johnny, Victor Hedman, a couple years ago, he played in the postseason. He was not right. And the Tampa Bay Lightning were eliminated in 4 straight games, and it was pretty clear he wasn't himself. In fact, he ended up not finishing that series on the ice. I'm worried because he's going to have surgery, apparently, for whatever's bothred him in the offseason. So that's the big one for me. So I do have a level of concern. I would say a pretty reasonable level of concern for the Bolts.
Yeah, my level of concern is not insignificant. I mean, it's there, and you highlighted a lot of the reasons why. I think the number one, right to the point, it's Victor Hedman. We can talk about Stamkos. Well, they won a cup last year basically without Steven Stamkos. They had a great year without Nikita Kucherov. What they don't have is anybody else who can play remotely like or as well as Victor Hedman. That's not surprising because when he's healthy, he's probably the best defenseman in the world. So, of course, there'd be no one else to replace him. But the reference to Columbus is an apt one because he was not right in that series, and they ended up with great goaltending by Columbus, but also Victor Hedman's injury getting swept there. So that one is the big one to me. I expect Kucherov, because of the style he plays, because of the fact that he's been on the ice for the better part of 6 weeks, and because of the fact that he's so comfortable with all the important players on Tampa, that he won't take very long to get back up and running. You know, he'll be on the power play, he'll handle the puck. He probably should be in pretty good shape. It might take a while to get used to getting hit again, but beyond that, I think he'll be okay. Stammery, sadly, jumped in and out of the lineup after long stretches many, many times in his career, and he usually looks pretty good when he gets back. I'm not worried about any of that. I'm worried about Victor Hedman. That's the one that is an issue to me. And then I haven't even mentioned yet the fact that Florida's beat them in the season series. Florida's a really good team.
5 of 8.
Florida has home ice. I mean, let's not act like they're playing, some scrubs over there that are going to be scared to play against Tampa. I think Florida relishes the opportunity to go against their interstate rival. It's going to be a hard, physical, nasty series. They're hard. There were a lot of pushing and shoving and scrums and everything else. So that's the kind of series it's going to be. And for all those reasons, I'm worried. And who knows? What if Bobrovsky channels his Columbus, and then they could be in real trouble? So, yeah, it's going to be a tough road for Tampa. I
like that we were showing Bennett in some of those physical plays there, because we've always known him as a guy that is a playoff-type player. A great acquisition for the Florida Panthers, not just because of the physicality. He's even putting up points for them as well. Now, not to stir the pot. No, to stir the pot. Vasilevsky's numbers against the Panthers. I mean, Vasilevsky is the lead to win the Vezina this year, no question. But his numbers against the Panthers look a little different than his numbers against the rest of the Central Division. And I don't think that phases Andrei Vasilevsky or the Tampa Bay Lightning, but I do think it probably gives the Florida Panthers a little bit of confidence in terms of how they're able to play against him and knowing that he doesn't always necessarily look like Vezina Vasilevsky when he plays them. And I think mentally there might be just a little something to that.
I would agree, Jackie, because think about Vasilevsky's impact against the Dallas Stars in the final last year and in the season series this year. And the Stars missed by a couple of points. Vasilevsky was in their heads. They could not score against this guy. A lot of guys don't score against Vasilevsky. And, Johnny, I'll pose it to you really quick because you were in that position to try to score against great goaltenders. I would imagine there's some guys that get in your head a little bit because they're that good. The Florida Panthers don't seem to mind, and I think that's a benefit going into this.
Yeah, Dominic Hasek in Buffalo when I was playing in Toronto early in my career. No fun. No fun. You didn't know what was going on. You never could score against him. Every time you got around him, he'd be sliding at you, poke you. You're like, what are you doing, man? Stop. Just stay there. Be still. And so, yeah, absolutely, when you struggle against one player, it can get into your head a little bit. And Vazzy is good enough for all the concerns we just outlined to make them all go away. He's that good. He has that ability.
All right, next question. Question number 2, we'll look at the Florida Panthers. Who is the most crucial to the Florida Panthers' success in this series against Tampa? If you had to nail it down to one person.
Boy, it's hard for me to nail it down to one person because they are.
Why it's a burning question.
I know. It's as they're. If Aaron Ekblad was healthy, I might say Aaron Ekblad because you always think, like Johnny points out a bit about Victor Hedman. You look at that defenseman that's going to play those big minutes. The Florida Panthers, I mean, you look at their group of defensemen here. I mean, maybe it's Mackenzie Weegar of all people because
EJ,
go ahead.
Don't steal my thunder. It is Mackenzie Weegar.
There you go. I got it right.
Who would have ever thought we'd be talking about the Florida Panthers with home ice against Tampa, and their most important player is probably Mackenzie Weegar. It's amazing what he's done this year. And you have to understand how Florida plays to realize why he's so important. Because Florida is all about off the rush, joining the rush, turning pucks over, and getting up the ice quickly. And Mackenzie Weegar does that better than anyone else on the Florida Panthers. He stops the rush, he outlets the pass, and he goes. He is fearless. He's up the ice all the time. And that's the mindset that Florida plays with, which is why they are so successful and have been so successful this year. Mackenzie Weegar, he's the guy, if he's on top of his game. Now, he's never played in this kind of pressure-packed situation as the #1 defenseman. It's always been Aaron Ekblad. He's the guy they would lean to and look to. But if you're Tampa, you're going to circle a name on the board, say, okay, we got to make this the game difficult for this guy. That's the guy on defense they're going to point to because he's so important because he cues up a lot of the stuff they do in the offensive zone, off the rush, breaking out, you name it, he impacts it. EJ, it is unbelievably Mackenzie Weegar.
I'm gonna bring up this person, and you guys tell me how important they are to the success of the Florida Panthers in this series. Coach Q. I mean, the Panthers have home ice. I think that's a big deal. How important, how much can a coach like Joel Quenneville, who's been around a long time, done a lot of winning in this league, how much can he impact this series?
Well, I think he can impact it in a lot of ways because they have last change, as the home team to start the series. So, for me, I would think that he could have quite an impact here. He's coached in all kinds of big games. He's won multiple Stanley Cups. When the boat gets rocking on that bench, Joel Quenneville's been there and done that. In fact, he's coached a team that beat John Cooper and the Tampa Bay Lightning when you go back to 2015 with the Chicago Blackhawks. So, Johnny, you played, you've been on those benches. I mean, I don't know. At the end of the day, you got the better players there. They're going to find ways to win. But I do think having an experienced guy like Joel Quenneville is helpful for a Tampa team, for a Florida team that does not have a ton of playoff experience.
It doesn't hurt, but I'm not going to overstate it. I think his impact will be negligible as far as in-game. Florida's a good team. They have players that have played in important situations. If they're going to get rattled, having Q back there saying calm down, not going to help them that much.
Calm down, boys.
But certain decisions.
Whoa, boys, relax. No. The one spot that Q can help is he can make a call on the goalies easier and earlier than someone with a lesser resume.
That's true.
That is the place he can impact this series the most. If Bob is not playing well after one game, after one period, Q has the cachet to say, okay, that's it, we're going somewhere else. And it's not going to be an issue. Some other coaches might think twice given the financial commitment and everything else that goes on with these decisions to make that call. Quenneville will not have any trouble doing it. That's how he could impact the series. Beyond that, it's going to be decided by the players.
Quenneville won't quiver. That's all I can think about as you were saying that. He ain't scared to make a change. All right, next question. Which team in this division has the most concerning injury heading into round one? And maybe we already touched on it. I'm not sure, but who do you
think? I mean, I think Victor Hedman stands out in that regard. Now, he's going to play, so at least as far as we know, that's a good news. So, but he's the guy that I would circle out of this division that's most important, that could swing it one way or the other if he's not right. We saw it last year in the bubble. Remember, Johnny, he got that little injury against the Flyers at the end of the round robin, and everybody was like, oh, boy, this is going to be a big problem. And in the end, fortunately, he was okay, and the rest, as they say, is history. So for me, it would still be Victor Hedman is the guy to watch, because that could change the whole balance of power in the division.
Well, you know, I've been on the Kane train for all year long, so I'm thinking Jacob Slavin.
That's
I
another
think Carolina
good one.
is one of the 5 favorites to win the Stanley Cup, along with Tampa. But Carolina is in that group: Vegas, Colorado, probably Toronto. Those are the 5 teams that should be favorite to get to the Stanley Cup. And Slavin is such a pivotal part of all that they do. And I know they have Pesce and they have Dougie Hamilton and a wealth of very good defensemen. But Slavin is their lockdown guy. I mean, he does it just kind of effortlessly, quietly, but gets up the ice, creates turnovers, keeps pucks in the zone. He does everything really well and plays big minutes against tough opponents. They need him. If they get to the second round and it's up against either one of Florida or Tampa, he's the guy who faces Kucherov, who faces Barkov. He's the guy who shuts them down. They'll need him healthy if they want to go all the way.
And you know, one thing I'd add about Slavin, Jackie, is last year when they met the Boston Bruins in that series after they were able to get through the first round. Slavin didn't play well. And I don't know if he was injured or what it was, but he was not the same guy that I'm used to seeing. So to your point, Johnny, and I would say it to you, Jackie, we'll see how he is health-wise. But if he's not playing well, that's problematic for the Carolina Hurricanes for all the reasons that Mike just mentioned.
By the way, Slavin was on the ice this morning, but I believe he practiced solo from the rest of the team. All right, next question. UC Saros is hands down the biggest reason the Nashville Predators are in the postseason, about to take on those Carolina Hurricanes. My question for you boys is not just, can UC Saros steal a game? Can UC Saros, if he puts up these monster numbers that he's been putting up, steal a series?
Yeah, I think he can. I think he'll be hard-pressed to do it against the Carolina Hurricanes. But, I mean, when you put up a .941 save percentage over 23 games to finish the season, I mean, that's no joke. Mike just mentioned Dominik Hasek before. That's who I think about when I think about those kind of numbers. Absolutely. And we've seen this movie before with goaltenders in the postseason. I mean, the Nashville Predators were a victim of a goaltender last year when they played the Arizona Coyotes, and it was the great goaltending from the Coyotes that made a difference. I think that you can see the numbers. For me, Johnny, I think he's got, I mean, those numbers tell me it's possible.
Yeah, and it's possible. And he did some of that work against Carolina. And I think for Nashville, I'm with you. I think he is capable of winning the series, and I think that's about the only way that Nashville wins this series, is if he has one of those crazy runs where he probably has to win 2 games in this series where Carolina outshoots Nashville 50-25. And I think they've done that in the regular season. Carolina has outshot Nashville like 2-1 on multiple occasions during this regular season. But UC Saros is used to being busy. He doesn't get rattled by getting hemmed in his own end. It happened several times throughout this year. And you see the numbers. They speak for themselves. He got a .941. How did he lose 6 games with a .941? That's the crazy part. He'll have to do it for almost every single game, because I think Carolina will control play, chances, shots, all those things. But the great equalizer, and it's a tremendous comfort to have that, know that on any night, our guy can win us the game, whether we deserve it or not, whether we're as good or not. None of it, our guy can get it done because he's that good. Saros has been and will have to be that good some more.
Got to be one of the biggest X factors for their team of any opening series to start the Stanley Cup playoffs in UC Saros and the Nashville Predators. All right, 5th and final burning question. We're going to get to the Carolina Hurricanes. They've won the division. What is the biggest question mark or hurdle facing the Carolina Hurricanes as they enter the playoffs?
Well, I'll stick with what I've been saying about the Carolina Hurricanes for the last little while now. I mean, I love their team. They're loaded. I love their forward group. I love the way they're slotted. They're loaded on the back end. I mean, it's amazing how many good defensemen this team really has. their goaltenders are good. I mean, Nedeljkovic played really good this year in his rookie season. You see the numbers there, 932 and 3 shutouts. Nothing to sneeze at there, my friends. And then Peter Mrazek was injured, missed a lot of time. But his numbers are great. But when you move forward now into these big moments in the playoffs, will Mrazek and/or Nedeljkovic, and I don't think if it gets to James Reimer,
something's going wrong.
I think there's problems in Carolina. That's just my feeling.
Right.
You know, again, it's just the way I see that situation in Carolina. So in those big games, I still have to see it from Mrazek and Nedeljkovic. I believe both of those guys won championships at the American Hockey League level, but now we're at the next level. And it's, you know, we come on and we talk about this stuff all the time. These guys have played really well. And once they do it at that high level, we're not going to probably question them again. But for now, that's my biggest question about the Carolina Hurricanes. In a big moment, if they're in a Game 7, if they're in an overtime situation, will they get the big save from either of those guys? So for me, that's the thing that I'm still wondering.
And it's an impossible question to answer because until you do it, you haven't done it.
You haven't done it.
Like, what can you do about it until you get in that situation and get the chance? I mean, so I think that's an obvious question, that obvious place to kind of look. But to me, if we're going to dig a little bit deeper, perhaps some of their most important players and most impactful players in the playoffs are kind of young power forwards. I know what I'm going to get out of Sebastian Aho. He's incredible. But Svechnikov had a great start, mediocre middle, strong finish. You know, if he goes into a run of cool play, that's not good for them. If Nino Niederreiter goes on a run of cool play, like I think they have a whole bunch of really good players, but they have had runs of inconsistent production, as almost all players do. And if they run into some of that cold play, cue the soundtrack now, in the first round or second round, then perhaps that might be an issue. But I'm nitpicking because I love their team.
Yeah,
I don't think there is any real holes in it. They have every reason to believe that they can win the first round, second round. And I think advancing a little bit last year, even though they lost to Boston, even just getting through a little bit, takes away that they've never been there. Like, they've never had any kind of success. I think the belief within themselves is now there, and so is the talent to take it much further.
Hey, they got to the Eastern Conference Finals 2 years ago, right? I mean, we forget, beat Washington, beat the Islanders, ended up getting swept by the Bruins. But, you know, they're on that path that we watch, and they're making their move. We'll see if this is the year.
That was the year every #1 seed was eliminated in the first round. That was something to watch a couple of years ago. And based on listening to Johnny, I'd say for the Carolina Hurricanes, he feels that's all that's left to be done is to do it. So we shall see if the Carolina Hurricanes will take on the Nashville Predators in the first round. That does it for Burning Questions.